is John Kleitz, and we are going to talk today about how to teach English in Brazil. Looks like it's right on the hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. So let's go ahead and get started. Plus, we have a lot to go through today. So, the first thing I want to cover is who is this presentation for? Well, hopefully, you have an interest in Brazil and perhaps staying in Brazil for some length of time. Um, you might be younger, or you might be older. I've had people come to me as young as 17 asking about opportunities to teach down there up to retirement age. Slightly more men are interested in going down there to Brazil, but very many women too. So over 40%. So it's close to 50-50. So you probably fall into that category. Now, the other thing I want to say, though, is that to teach English in Brazil, you really should be a native speaker, or at least what I'll call near native, because that's what the people down there are looking for in a teacher. All right. Now, before we go much further, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. You can see my name up there. That's me a few years back on Lemmy Beach in Rio. If you don't know, Lemmy is kind of an extension of Copacabana Beach. Very nice. I lived in this little neighborhood for about a year and a half. It's really very, very nice. It's like a little enclave down there. My relationship with Brazil goes all the way back to 1993. That was when I first met a Brazilian couple who were living in the US, and they invited me to travel back to Brazil with them. And I did, and I fell in love with the place. I started going back pretty much every year. And then fast forwarding some years later, my company, the company I worked for, was bought out by Oracle, and I was offered a nice severance package. I took it, and then I said, "What am I going to do next?" So I went down to Brazil, and I began teaching English down there, and I've really enjoyed it. I was not a natural at it, but I came to really love it and to be really good at it. Now, in, probably my name is new to you, but you may have encountered me on Facebook or YouTube, or you may have read one of the many articles that I've written. I've written a lot of articles for International Living, Transitions Abroad, Live and Invest Overseas, about Brazil, about teaching English, about teaching English in Brazil, about teaching English online, different things. I've also written a bit for Professional Hobo, and my very favorite article my personal favorite that I've written is about downsizing and my experience when I first went to Brazil, and that's been republished in the Huffington Post. So if you're interested, you can go over there and search my name on the Huffington Post. Okay. Now, also, I'll have a co-host today, Tatiana Ferran. She purchased my course recently, and she's going to be joining us just a little bit later. Got a message from her, so I'll introduce you more to her later. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Well, first, why Brazil? Now, I'm sure that you already have some idea in your mind, about Brazil and why you want to go there, but I'm going to give you maybe some more reasons to go. And then I want to talk about why teach English in Brazil. Why do that? Because most people really aren't that excited about teaching English, but I think that perhaps after this presentation, you might be a little bit more excited. I want to address the three most common questions and concerns that I hear from people who are thinking about doing this. I am going to talk a little bit about my course. I offer a soup to nuts, A to Z, A to Z course on teaching English in Brazil and living there too. And then at the end, I'll cover some more common questions that I get. And also in there, I'm going to talk a little bit about, what a typical plan might look like for you. How do you pull all of this together? Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. And so, why would you want to go to Brazil? Well, it's a huge, diverse country. I mean, Brazil is fully half of South America. Whether you look at geographic area, population, or economy, Brazil is half of a whole continent. And it's very diverse. There are 26 states plus the federal district, and I think it's very interesting how you'll see regional differences there. So, Rio is only a small part of Brazil. So why go to Brazil? Well, I mentioned Rio. Most people, when they hear Brazil, think about something like this. I imagine Rio de Janeiro. This is Ipanema Beach, looking toward Dois Irmãos, two brothers, there in the back. But Brazil is a lot more than that. I mean, they do have beautiful, beautiful beaches. Something like 8,000 miles of coastline. So yeah, they have some great beaches there, but so much more. Sports, for instance. So here you see a couple of guys surfing, and there are other things too, like beach volleyball is very big down there. Soccer, of course, is very big. And actually, they have something that I think is unique to Brazil called foot volley, which is a combination of beach volleyball and soccer. So imagine this, it's beach volleyball played without your hands or your arms. So people will launch the ball with their foot, and then they'll like set it up with a shoulder or a chest or sometimes even a hip and spike it with their forehead. I mean, it's amazing to watch these guys. I could never do this, but if you're into sports, Brazil is a great place to go. Music. When I was living in Brazil, I received a visitor from Australia, a guy named Rod, and who was a musician, guitarist, and he was coming to Brazil to study the music. And if you're really interested in music, you might be interested in going to Brazil for that as well. There's romance, of course. I think if you've seen any pictures of Brazil, you know there are a lot of beautiful people down there. Although full disclosure, these the two girls in this picture are Argentinians. I met them at Foz do Iguaçu, which is there on the border between Brazil and Argentina, near Paraguay. So if you're looking for romance, you could do worse than Brazil. The food is great too. Now, depending on where you live, you may have gone to a Brazilian barbecue place. It's called churrasco, where they bring all the meat to you till you die, right? But Brazil has lots of other kinds of cuisine too. And one of the things I love about the food down there, it's much more natural than you might be used to, particularly if you live in North America. You can see here a typical spread at what they call a por kilo restaurant, which is by weight. You pay by weight, and the food is great. Going back to my first times down to Brazil, I remember that one of the things that really grabbed me was just how good the food was, how good it smelled, and how good it tasted. Particularly breakfast. And I'm not a big breakfast eater, but the coffee is wonderful. I'm sure that you probably know that it's right up there with Colombian coffee, but also like the fruits, like bananas and mango. They were so good. And why? Because they were picked a few hours before I was eating them. Contrast that with, let's say, bananas that you might buy in the US or Canada. These are grown maybe in Costa Rica, and then they're shipped in a gas, which keeps them green, right? They're picked when they're green. They're shipped up to North America in this gas, which keeps them from ripening because they don't want them to spoil. Then, when they arrive up here, they change it to another gas so that the bananas can now become yellow, and then they sell them in the stores, and they look very good. But the taste is nothing the same because they were picked when they're green. So in Brazil, you can find really natural food, very flavorful food. Sorry, I went on about that a bit. Something else about Brazil, you may have heard this, they have really super friendly people. So, going back a few years, if you watch some of the uh, television coverage of Brazil during the World Cup or during the Olympics down there in Rio, you probably heard visitors to Brazil saying over and over and over again about how friendly, how receptive, how warm the people are down there, and it's really true. I love this picture. These are three old guys out there who were surfing on their little board up in Natal, which is up in the northeast of Brazil, and just really great people. Maybe the thing that I love most about Brazil, however, is its natural beauty. I'm an amateur photographer, and wow, if you're like me, and you like to take photographs, scenic photographs, I mean, again, there's no better place to go, I don't think, than Brazil. This is another shot of Iguazu Falls. If you look for adventure, this is a good place to go. You can go hang gliding like I am doing here. You can do if you're a little less adventurous, you can do the dune buggy tours and a Jeep. There's all kinds of stuff out there you can do. One thing I want to try in the future is windsurfing, kite surfing, I mean. So if you're up for adventure, there's all kinds of stuff to do down there. So think for a minute, about why are you interested in Brazil? I think it's good to kind of get an image in your mind and hold that image in your mind to keep you motivated in this process. I want you to turn this from a dream into a reality. So it's good to have a vision of what it is that you're hoping to find down there. So probably wasn't a very hard sell. You were probably already of a mind to go down to Brazil before we went through those slides. But why would you want to teach English down there? Because let's be honest, when you say teaching English, that doesn't get most people excited, right? Um, Although it's not probably what you imagine, it's not all about teaching grammar. You're not going to be teaching a classroom. I'll talk a little bit more about what teaching English really is like later here in the presentation. The big reason for teaching English is simply that you can extend your stay. If you want to go down and stay 90 days, 180 days in Brazil, well, you may be fortunate enough where you've got all the cash you need and you can lie on the beach all day or do whatever you want. But, most of us, we would need to earn a little bit of cash to underwrite that stay. And teaching English down in Brazil is a great way, as I say, a great way to fund your fun in the sun. You'll make above average pay. Now, I mean, you're not going to get rich doing this. I don't think you get rich teaching anything, but you'll make above average pay, certainly way above what the typical Brazilian makes. And when I was living down there, I typically would work between 20 and 25 hours a week, with teaching, actually delivering classes, and a little bit of time for lesson prep on Fridays for the following week. And that covered my nut. It covered my expenses and left me plenty of time to get out and follow other pursuits. Now, there is a huge demand for native speakers to teach English in Brazil. And I stress native because a lot of Brazilians have studied English maybe for years, but never with a native speaker. Most English teachers in Brazil are not natives. And indeed, I've seen that to be true around the world. And so when one of these Brazilians gets hold of an actual live native speaker of English, they get very excited about it because you can give them things that a non native teacher could not. For example, one of the top things that Brazilians are really looking for is to reduce their accents, to improve their accent. And, you have an authentic accent that they can learn from. Also, you have a much better command of things like idioms, expressions, slang, also cultural mores. You can teach them about the culture of your country, and so you can offer them things that a non-native teacher just can't. Again, you have many different regions of Brazil, many different cities that you could choose from. I'll go through a list of these toward the end of this presentation, but Rio is great. That's where I started, but there are other places in Brazil that you might prefer. Now, you don't need much to get started. So here's a picture of a hurdler. And the idea here is that if you are a native English speaker, you've already jumped the big hurdle, right? So you don't need much to get started. And in fact, most of what you need is right here between your ears. You are the expert for all of the reasons that I talked about a couple slides back. So, sometimes people are thinking about teaching English in Brazil, but they're a little nervous, oh, I don't know, my grammar's not so good and blah, blah, blah. Believe me, you are the expert. No matter how much your student has studied English before, you know more than he or she does because you've been speaking it since you were bouncing on your mom's knee, right? And so you are the expert, and it's all good to remember that as you start teaching that you're the smartest person in the room, at least as far as English goes, right? One of the other good things about teaching English in Brazil is that you'll have a lot of free time. I mentioned this a few slides back here, and this is one of the things that I really loved about this work. So I would typically have one or two classes in the morning before my students would go to work, maybe one in the lunch hour, and then most would be at night, in the evening after my students were back from work. This gave me a break, a window in the morning and in the afternoon. So in the morning, I typically try to do my business stuff, go to the bank, grocery store, whatever I needed to do. And in the afternoon, then I was free to go to the gym, go to the beach, get my exercise in, or, goof off. And so you'll have a lot of free time teaching English to do whatever you want. This, by the way, on the left, that's the foot volley that I was talking about earlier. It's an amazing sport to watch. And then again, beyond the right there, that is hang gliding off of Pedro Bonita, which is in Rio. And the fun thing about teaching English in Brazil, and I really probably shouldn't say this, but it's not that hard, really. I mean, when I compare this to some of the jobs I had, I mean, when I was a kid, I built fences, and I'm not a big guy, and that was really hard work. I washed dishes in a restaurant. I was a janitor. Even after college, when I got into, professional jobs, um, they were hard. They were stressful, and by contrast, I really enjoy teaching English. I enjoy my classes. I look forward to a lot of them. I view a lot of my students as friends. So, teaching English, especially with Brazilians, who are very friendly folks, it's just not that hard. All right. So maybe all of this is starting to sound pretty good. Brazil, you were already sold on. Now you're thinking, well, maybe, teaching English wouldn't be so bad, but maybe you still have questions. So let's address the top three questions that I get. The top three biggest questions, concerns are about visas, and do you need a TEFL or similar teaching certificate, and how much can you make? So let's address each of those. First, visa. Now, if you were to go to Brazil today, you would probably not need a visa. It depends on what country you're coming from, but if you're from one of the native English speaking countries, then you probably would not need a visa. But that's going to change soon. Okay. But first, just to be clear on a visa, what that is. A visa is just a formal permission from the government of another country to allow you to visit there legally. And they used to look like what you see here. So in your passport, the Brazilian visa would be a sticker that basically covered a whole page, right? And they were good for 5 to 10 years, depending on which country you're coming from. All right. Now it's changed, and Brazil now offers e-visas. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. It's actually an easier process, but you no longer have to go to a Brazilian embassy in person or send your stuff off and wait and wait and wait. You can do it online now. Before we go into the details of that, do you need a visa? Well, uh, if you're from the US, Canada, or Australia, uh, the answer is yes. Now, this is starting April 10th of this year, 2025. On the other hand, if you're from the UK, Republic of Ireland, New Zealand, or South Africa, and you hold a passport from one of those countries, no, you will not need a visa. And of course, you might ask, well, why does I need one when they don't need one? It has to do with reciprocity. So basically, like if you're from the US requires Brazilians to get a visa to visit here. And so Brazil says, well, you're going to need a visa to visit us. Um, Brazil did away with that requirement for a number of years to try and boost tourism, but they're going to reinstate the policy of reciprocity this April 10th. So again, look at that. You may not have to worry about visas. On the other hand, if you're from US, Canada, or Australia, you need to pay attention here because again, the rules change effective of April 10th of this year. The cost for most people applying for a visa will be, for some unknown reason, $80.90 US. I have no idea how they arrived at that number. And you can find more about the process and the details at this website. You may want to do a screenshot here. Now, you'll notice this is from CNN and not an official government site, but it is, however, a really good summary of the process, and I think you might want to read that. Now, if you do need to apply for a visa, here's how you do it. You're going to apply through a third party company called VFS, and I don't know, that's probably Visa something services. There is their website, and at the bottom you'll see there's an email address in case you get stuck. You can actually write to them and they'll step you through the process, but it's really not that hard. Now, one thing I want to stress here is you're going to be applying for a tourist visa, not a work visa. Now you're saying, but John, I'm going to be teaching English down there. I need a work visa. No. Okay. Here's why. To get an official work visa, you have to be sponsored by a Brazilian company, and that's just not going to happen. It's not that it's that expensive for them to apply for this, but there's a lot of bureaucracy, and they're just not going to do it. Particularly since they don't know you, you're not down there, they're not sure you're coming or anything. It's just not going to happen. The foreigners who do get work visas in Brazil are those who have legal residency. Maybe they're married to a Brazilian, something like that. What you are going to apply for is a tourist visa. Now, let's talk about that a second because this makes a lot of would-be teachers nervous. They say, "Well, John, I don't want to go down there as a tourist and work, teach English. I might get in trouble." Well, first thing is, how is the Brazilian government even going to know, right? Unless you put up a billboard by the side of the road, how are they even going to know that you're teaching classes? The other thing is they really don't care. I started teaching English in Brazil in 2008. I lived down there for a dozen years. And all of that time, I never met a teacher who was ejected from Brazil for teaching without a work visa. Never even heard of, I didn't know anybody personally, and I never even heard stories about it. Nobody is going to show up at your apartment 3 in the morning, knock down the door, drag you off to the airport, and throw you on a plane. Just does not happen. It's not like the Schengen area in Europe, for example, where they're very strict about this, and they may eject you and ban you from coming back for a certain number of years, or perhaps Japan or South Korea. You need an official work visa to teach English there. Brazil and indeed across Central America, it's pretty much the same. You won't need one. You can just go on a tourist visa and work unofficially. All right. Now, how long are you allowed to stay? You're allowed to stay a total of 180 days, which breaks down actually into 90 days and then a 90-day extension. So how this works is when you get your visa, or if you go down without a visa, you are initially allowed 90 days from the date of entry. Okay. And then as you get toward the end of those 90 days, you can do one of two things. You can either cross a border and return, and that starts the clock all over again. So you might fly down to Buenos Aires for a weekend. You don't have to stay any particular length of time. You just have to cross the border and come back into Brazil. So you could fly down for a weekend to Buenos Aires. That's very popular. I've been there. It's a nice city, so you might do that. Or you can visit the office of the federal police who handle immigration issues in Brazil. Any state capital or really pretty much any large city in Brazil is going to have a branch of the federal police where you can get an extension. Now, I want to be clear about something because you see some misinformation sometimes online. It's not 3 months and 6 months. Okay. It's 90 days and 180 days. So don't show up at the federal police to get your visa extended on day 91 or 92 because they might say, no, you've overstayed. Okay. Likely they would still extend, but don't give them a reason not to. On that note, years ago, I wrote an article for International Living about visas to Brazil, and I interviewed an attorney for background on this, and he said the way the law is written is the federal police must extend your stay, give you that second 90 days, unless they can provide a valid reason not to, such as you've been arrested or you show up on day 92 instead of day 89 or 90 to extend your stay down there. So just word to the wise, don't give them any reason to deny you. Okay. But what this all means is that you can stay in Brazil for essentially half of the year. Now, after 180 days, yes, you'll have to leave. But the next year, on the anniversary date of your first arrival in Brazil, you can go back and do it again. Okay. Now, second question I get a lot is, do you need a TEFL certificate? And the answer to that is a resounding no. Now, I know if you go to like the TEFL.org site, they're going to tell you, yes, you really need a TEFL certificate for Brazil. That's bull. The reason they say that is they sell TEFL programs, right? I'm going to tell you, as somebody who earned a TEFL certificate before he went to Brazil, I would not do it again. What a waste of money. I got mine. You can see that's mine right there. John Roger Clydes, that is me. I earned this in 2008. It's covered up by the no, but it was 2008, shortly before I went down to Brazil. And I was first in my class, about 25, 26, 7 of us. And so I get down to Brazil, and initially I applied with schools. I was working through schools down there, and I'm proudly waving my TEFL certificate, and the reaction was kind of like, "Oh, okay, nice." Nobody looked at it. Nobody contacted TEFL International, um, and it was kind of a waste. Even back then, I don't remember exactly how much I spent, but I know it was north of 2000 US, and that was in 2008. I don't know what it would be today, because I had to pay not only the tuition, but airfare down to Costa Rica for a month. It was a residency program. And then I, of course, had to pay for lodging, I had to pay for food, all of that stuff. So, something to think about is that a TEFL certificate, I don't think it's going to help you get hired. Okay. It's certainly not going to boost how much you're paid. So it's just not a good investment. Okay. In terms of money or time. All right. Again, TEFL certificates are not generally they're not required and nor much valued in Brazil. And again, they're not cheap. Don't expect to earn back your investment. So the only exception I would say to that is if you're intending to make teaching English abroad kind of a career, and you might go to other places after Brazil, such as Japan or South Korea or something. Then you might want to get one, but um, just going to teach English in Brazil, no, not at all. Now, sometimes people will push back at me and they'll say, "Well, I hear you, John, but I'm not comfortable. I need teaching experience." Okay. Well, look, I understand that. I understand that. So if you all you want is really to get teaching experience, you want to get a little bit seasoned and you want to feel comfortable going down there and charging for your services, here's my suggestion. First, volunteer. Okay. If you go pretty much any mid-sized city or larger is going to have programs teaching English to new arrivals. Okay. How do you find these? Well, you could go to the main branch of your public library. That's a great place to find out about volunteer opportunities in your community. You might also go to churches that have large community outreach programs, and they might be able to set you up. And these kinds of programs, I actually taught Lawbach system of reading years ago through a church. And it's a great experience for everybody. It's good, of course, for the student. They get free education in English to help them get going in their new country. It's good for you because you get the experience. And so when you begin to actually charge for your services, you don't have that imposter syndrome that you hear about. All righty. And then 1 second here. What you gonna make? Well, I'm gonna have to hedge a little bit here because it does vary a lot. So uh, it depends on a few factors, and I think mainly on these four factors: whether you work for a school or whether you're independent. So when you work for a school, they're going to pay you less than you can make as an independent, and that should make sense because they find the students, and they um, may train you a bit, and they have advertising costs, and they've got rent to pay, and they got to pay for a receptionist, and they hope to make a profit at the end. So typically a school is going to keep about half of what their students pay them and give you as the teacher the other half. So then if you were an independent, you can get close to double, okay, what a school is liable to pay you, okay? Also, how much you make depends on which city. Sao Paulo is, I would imagine, the highest paying city in Brazil. And you can make more money there. So if you're really intent on making some money, that's the best place. If you want to try and save some money, definitely Sao Paulo, because most other places, you'll help subsidize your stay there, but you're not going to bank anything. Your niche, okay, so or niche if you prefer. I was raised in the southern U.S., so I say niche. If you're just teaching conversation classes, then you're going to be low end of the scale. On the other hand, maybe if you're teaching business English, which is what I do principally, then you could charge a bit more. Now, if you have a good specialty, you can do better. So, an example of a good specialty would be you help students prepare for the TOEFL exam. Now, don't confuse that with the TEFL exam. TOEFL exam is Test of English as a Foreign Language, and that's what a student in Brazil would need to take and pass in order to be able to attend university in an English speaking country. All right. And that's very important for them, right? Passing this test is very important. So you could work with students and make top dollar with that. Another good specialty, I think I've done a bit of this. It's not my favorite, but you can make good money doing it, is helping people to prepare to do job search in English. So that's preparing them first with the resume, teaching them about cover letters because they don't use cover letters in Brazil, helping them prepare for job interviews, follow up after the interview, and so on. So if you have perhaps some experience either in HR or simply hiring people, you've been a manager somewhere and you hired people, that could be a good niche that pays more. Okay. And the final thing I want to say is how much can you make? It really depends on whether you can market yourself. Some people have great resumes, but they're just very timid about marketing themselves. And put yourself out there. You're a native English speaker in Brazil, flaunt it, right? Now, uh, to help you a little bit more, how much can you make? Well, find out how much the local language schools charge their students for English lessons. Now, since you speak English, you don't want to call up the school or pop by there yourself, but get one of your Brazilian friends to call their acting as if she wants English classes and how much is the tuition going to be. That gives you a pretty good idea of what the schools charge their students. And then you might want to charge like 80-90% of that, so you're more attractive than the school, okay, for people who are looking for classes. You could also find out, talking to other teachers, how much do the language schools pay their teachers. And if you're independent, you can make, again, about twice that. Okay. So these are really good ways to kind of zero in on what you can charge in a particular market. And then it's just a matter of marketing yourself. And we'll talk a little about that. It's not that hard. Okay. All right. So maybe at this point okay, I was sold on Brazil, and now I'm thinking, yeah, okay, yeah, I could do teaching English, all right, and okay, visa things, okay, blah 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 blah. But this is likely something new for you. You may have gone and spend an extended time in another country. Very likely you have not. So, how will you get started? Well, I would like to suggest that you make an investment in my course about teaching English and living in Brazil. And I'm going to here give you just a very high level idea of what all is included in the course. I tell you what I'm going to do is go over to teachable.com, which is where the course is hosted, and I'll do a more detailed walkthrough of the curriculum there, and I'll insert it here into this video, the recording. Okay. So, what is in my course? Well, let's take a look. First, here's where it is. You might want to do a screenshot of this. Let me get myself up out of the way here. Okay, so you might want to do a screenshot of this, and of course that URL at the top, you can see it's on Teachable, right? Is very long. So I created this short link. It goes to the same place down there, and so once you get yourself a screenshot, and you can go to the ANSH blah 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 blah, and that'll take you to my course, and you can see more of what's in there. Okay. But at a high level, here's what's in the course. Deciding, is this right for you? It's going to go into more detail about what I've already talked about today, and also then about preparation. So, how much money do you need to save up beforehand? Where are you going to go? What's your niche going to be? Maybe contacting schools before you go down there, getting business cards ready before you go down, and so on. It's going to talk about arrival. So you're at the airport. What happens? How did going through immigration, getting transport outside the airport, finding your way around, getting a cell phone, all of that kind of stuff to get you started. Then I'm going to talk about working with schools. I worked for different schools for the first 8 or 9 months that I was in Brazil, and it's a good way to get started. I mean, I was teaching. I taught my first class my second week in Brazil, but that was because I contacted schools before I went down, and I, found out which ones were interested. And then as soon as I arrived, I contacted them about interviews, did interviews, and so I was off and running. But and I think that that's good for new teachers. But then I think that you'll probably move on to working independently. Indeed, that is sort of the typical track that I see for English teachers down there, is to start working through schools. And as soon as you're grounded and feel comfortable with that, then you start picking up your own students. And sometimes they find you. It's really interesting. You just get into conversations with people down there. They say, "Why are you here? What are you doing?" You say, "Well, I teach English here," and they go, "Oh, what's your number?" And so on. Really. And of course, this is a course on teaching English in Brazil. So there's a lot of teaching tips. For example, typical pronunciation issues that you're going to encounter down there. And again, Brazilians want to improve their accent. So a lot of what you'll be doing, especially initially with new students, is helping them improve their pronunciation. I give recommendations about teaching materials that you want to use, good grammar books and other resources, some websites where you can find free materials and so on. And then, as I believe I mentioned earlier, also I'm going to talk about living in Brazil. So understanding Brazilians and how things work down there, punctuality and so forth, or lack thereof. Then for a minority of you, it's not going to be most of you, but some of you are going to want to stay on. Well, it's easy to, as I said, stay for 180 days out of the year. It's difficult to stay for the entire year, but there are pathways. So for those of you who really fall in love with Brazil and want to stay down there, then there are ways to make that happen. So again, I'm going to, at this point right here, insert a deeper dive into the course by walking you through the curriculum over on Teachable. Okay. So as promised, I'm over here in Teachable now, and Teachable is one of the major course hosting platforms out there. And I'm going to give you a more detailed look at the curriculum for my course. So a little salesy stuff at the top, and there's a video of me. Oops, I don't know what's going on with that. My connection's a little bit slow today. Let's see. Then the first testimonial here. Oh, actually, this is interesting. This one is from Daiga, who's actually from Latvia. So she's not a native speaker, but her English was really good. And so she was able to teach English in Brazil. So I think, it's better if you're, of course, if you're a native speaker, but if your English is very good, then you can also make it down there. All right, so let's look at the curriculum. So, first, under deciding, a lot of this we just talked about, right? So why would you kind of want to come to Brazil? We'll talk a little bit more about types of teaching jobs. How much can you make? A little more detail on that. Teaching requirements. Do you need a TEFL? No. Okay. Where should you teach? What cities? When should you come? Visas again. So again, a lot of this should look pretty familiar, but just a bit more detail. All right, now preparation. So you have decided that you are, in fact, going to go down to Brazil and teach English. So first thing you need to do is create a timeline. A plan that is not written down is just a dream, right? So the first thing you need to do is write down your plan. You need to save up a cushion of money because you won't be teaching day one. And even after you begin teaching, it takes a while to build up your clientele. Learning Portuguese. And again, I would look for schools that offer Português para Estrangeiros, which is Portuguese for foreigners. Teaching certificate, we've talked enough about passports, visas. I probably need to, I think I've updated that already. Okay, health insurance and vaccinations. We did not talk about that. So you would definitely want to get in there. It depends on where you're going, and also as far as health insurance goes, um, what your home country will cover you for or not. Okay. Jumpstarting your job search. You can contact schools before you go down to Brazil. Now, don't expect them to offer you a job sight unseen, but you can gauge their interest. And then when you arrive down there, you can contact them and go do an interview with them. So that's what I did. I contacted a bunch of schools. I found a number of them that were interested, said, yeah, give us a call when you get here, did that. And, got students from about four of them starting out. How to arrange temporary lodging. Probably need to review that. There are more options than there used to be there. Okay. And oh, there's Nick. And then arriving, things to do there at the airport, getting oriented, getting a cell phone is very important, things you need to know about that, and finding more permanent lodging, what to expect, and doing the paperwork and everything. There are easy ways and hard ways to do that. Make it easy. Working with schools. So again, beginning your search from back home, and then once you are in Brazil, doing your on the ground search, hiring process, what to expect. Okay. And then pros and cons of that. Again, I think schools are fine for starting out, but once you're up and running, you're going to want to work independently. So I talk about that. One of the first things that you will need to do when you go independent is really decide on your niche. We talked some about this. Do you want to do just conversation classes, make it easy, make less money? Or do you want to go for some sort of a specialty niche? A lot of that's going to depend on your background and also on your interests. What should you charge more on that? Creating policies. I really didn't talk about that, but you need some policies. I'm not saying that you have to have a contract that both parties sign, but like I have mine in an email, and then after I do an initial uh, assessment with the student, if I decide to accept the student, I'll send them this email, and it has the policies in it. Marketing yourself, and again, get comfortable with doing that. There's nothing wrong with marketing yourself, and in fact, you are something special for the Brazilians down there as a native speaker. So don't be shy about marketing yourself. Teaching tips. Well, you are, after all, going to Brazil, and you're going to teach English there, right? So you first thing is you want to be organized from the beginning, and I give you some specifics on that. Also about assessing new students. I just mentioned that, and before I accept a student, I have a free 20, 30-minute assessment chat, I call it, with them. And that'll really help you out. If a student is just too rudimentary and you don't want to take them, you can pass them perhaps to somebody else. I talk about the Brazilian psyche, just some things to understand about dealing with Brazilians, tips on teaching grammar, books I use, etc. Conversation classes, how to keep them moving and uh, still beneficial for the student, even though they're just conversation. Pronunciation. Now, this is a lot of what you're going to be doing in Brazil. Brazilians tend to have strong accents in English, and you can help them to reduce those accents. And this is one of the key things that they're looking for from you as a native English speaker. So you can see some of the particular topics there. This is something you'll do a lot of, particularly in the beginning with your students. And you know what? You might even want to record some of the early classes with your student a few minutes and then show those to them, weeks down the road to show them how much they have improved, and they'll love you for that. Okay. Then we talk about living in Brazil. So a bit more about lodging, um, food and drink, which is an enjoyable section, transportation, health and safety, the different regions and the cultures, just as there are differences in the US between people from New York and Alabama. There are differences in Brazil between people from the Northeast and the South. I think I skipped health and safety, and that's an important topic. So, uh, how do you stay safe in Brazil? It's Brazil has a bad rep, and I think it's undeserved. There's violence down there, there's crime down there, and there's violent crime, but it's in pockets, right? And anybody can tell you avoid this area, and if you do that, you'll be pretty safe. I was down there 12 years, and the worst I had was a couple of verbal confrontations with panhandlers who were a little too aggressive. I felt, but that's it, right? Contrast this to the U.S. where I live, where you can have mass shootings anywhere. We have mass shootings every week. It's crazy. You never know where they're going to happen. So Brazil is really not that bad. Health, you do want to look at your health insurance if you're from a country that has nationalized coverage. You want to look at, will you still be covered in Brazil, for what, for how long, and so on. Right? And then the beach, key part of living in Brazil for a lot of folks. Music down there, budgeting. Your budget's going to look different when you're down there. You'll spend a larger percentage on lodging. You won't have a car. You'll use public transportation. So that part of your budget will be less. Food will likely be less. Food is relatively inexpensive down there, and so on. Managing without a bank account. I need to update this section. So by the time you get this, it'll probably be updated, but it's easier than it used to be, like when I was down there, because now we have these online apps, right? And where the student can pay you via an app. And one you want to remember is Revolut. It's like revolution without the ION, just Revolut. And as long as you and your student both have that app, student can pay you with no fees, and the exchange rate, is good, and there's no fees to either you or the student as long as you both have the Revolut app. It's really, really good. And I know that it works in Brazil. It's very big in Europe. You can use it here in the States too. So just verify that it works in your country, but the odds are yes. Okay. And then staying on long term. This, again, is not going to apply to most of you, but some of you may really fall in love with Brazil and you want to know, how can I stay here more than 180 days in a year? There are ways to do it. And so I cover those. And then I talk a little bit more then about getting local health insurance down there, some other ways to make money, dealing with the slow season, which is kind of mid-December till beginning of March. Okay. And dealing with the slow season. And I see my battery is running out. So I'm going to need to stop this, but that's the end. You can, at the bottom or the top, click a button, which will take you over to the checkout page. You can pay with any major credit card or via PayPal. And there's some other, other ways to pay now. And once you pay, you'll create your login credentials on the same page, and then you will have immediate access to the entire course there. All right. And you have 2 weeks to review everything, make sure it's what you're looking for. And if not, you can just write to Teachable there, and you get a complete refund of your money. Okay. Very good. And I'll now cut you back to the webinar. All right. All right. So now you're back. You've seen my course over on Teachable. What are the benefits of the course? Well, you'll begin earning faster. I'm going to show you how to start earning money, as soon as you hit the ground down there, and how to maximize your earnings, and um, also, reduce things like cancellations and that kind of thing. It's really very easy if you know how. I did not initially, but once I changed my policies, uh, and essentially it's getting paid up front and how I make that happen, how students buy into that, that helped tremendously. Okay. I'm going to help you avoid, rookie mistakes like, picking up the wrong students, for example, and frustrations that I suffered through. And you're going to learn about Brazilian life and culture, so you'll integrate more easily, and frankly, you will have more fun. So, what's my course going to cost? Well, you saw over there on the Teachable website that it's $249 US. It's not a subscription, that's a one-time payment. I think it's a great deal when you consider all the content in this course. And I do sometimes offer coupons. And what I want to do too, I want to try and put together a cohort, which is like a group of students who've just purchased my course, and take them through the process with weekly meetings, taking them through the preparation steps to be ready to go down to Brazil. So, what I encourage you to do is to check out my website. I have a new website. Here, yeah, I put the slide in coming this week. So, probably by the time you see this presentation, I'll have my new website up. It's simply Teach English in Brazil, very prosaic, but easy to remember. And on there, you can find out if I'm offering any coupons or trying to get the next cohort ready. Okay. All right. Now, before we leave, I'm going to quickly cover a few other frequently asked questions. All right. Do I need to speak Portuguese? Well, not to get a job, not to teach English. The key there is if you don't speak any Portuguese, don't get beginners as students. Get somebody who already speaks a reasonable amount of English as a student, so that you can communicate with that student in English. Okay. Now, having said that, you really should learn some Portuguese anyway, because you'll need it day to day to get by. There's not really a lot of English spoken in Brazil once you get away from the tourist hotels and restaurants on the strip. So you'll need some Portuguese, and hopefully that's one of the things you want to do down there is to learn some Portuguese. A note to Spanish speakers out there: if you do speak Spanish, it will help initially. It will give you a leg up. The languages are closely related, lots of cognates. So it will help you, but be careful of false cognates. And also, at some point, you got to put the Spanish behind you to really improve your accent in Portuguese, because two words may look the same but be pronounced very differently. Okay. How will I find students? Single best thing you can do down there, I know this is very low tech, it's very simple, is to get business cards. And you can get these printed up before you go down there. And you can put on there like your WhatsApp number. And that won't change, of course, down there. But by the way, every good Brazilian has WhatsApp. So, you should too. And you don't need a website. People ask me that sometimes. What I would suggest you do is get yourself a Facebook page. Okay. The Facebook page is not going to bring you probably a lot of traffic, but if people see that URL on your cards, they can then go visit the Facebook page and learn a little bit more about you. It gives you more credibility, uh, provides more details about you, your where you come from, your specialty, and any specials that you're running on. Join this month and get a discount, that kind of thing. You can see mine here. I put on mine the services on the front and the my qualifications on the back. And I want to add here, don't be too nervous about marketing. Get yourself some cards here and give them out freely. Okay, even to the little grandma on the elevator who's not going to be your student because her son, the lawyer, might be, right? Marketing is something you'll do more heavily in the beginning, and then it just sort of starts to snowball. Brazilians really they tell their friends, and they like to help you as the teacher. So if you ask, do you know anybody? They'll send people to you. It all gets easier. It all just branches out like multi-level marketing. And so you'll find that if you really hit it in the beginning and pass out a lot of cards, very soon you'll be getting calls from people that you have no idea how they got your card. That happened to me many, many times. All right. So where should you go? Well, a lot of you will probably go to Rio de Janeiro. That's where I started. And my decision was based on the fact that I felt like there was plenty of work there and plenty of play. And that's true. Okay. Sao Paulo is good, especially, if you want to really make the most money, or if you like big cities and culture and nightlife, it's really good for that. A lot of good restaurants too. North of Sao Paulo, just about an hour, is a university city called Campinas. That's also a nice place. It's near Sao Paulo, but you're not in that megalopolis, so it might be a little bit better for you. Oh, one thing I want to add about Sao Paulo that's nice is that it's a great base if you plan to explore other parts of Brazil, because from there you can get direct flights to almost all of Brazil. Now, another city you may have never heard of is Belo Horizonte, which means beautiful horizon, and it's inland. It's the capital of the state of Minas Gerais, which has no coastline. So It's not going to have the beach, which you may be looking for, but it's a lot of fun. And Belo Horizonte has a very youthful feel, in large part because there are so many universities there. So if perhaps you're interested in making university students your market, maybe you're going to help them prepare for the TOEFL exam or something. This is a good choice. It's very funny, as I say, they have no beach, but they have this expression that says, "Não tem mar, tem bar," which means we don't have an ocean, but we have bars. Okay, loosely translated. Another great place is in the south is Florianopolis, which means city of flowers, which I think is really cool. It's a very pretty place. It's located principally on an island. It's the capital of the state of Santa Catarina, and it's located mostly on an island. It's really good if you're into beaches, if you want to learn to surf or play paddleball on the beach, or just work on your tan. It's a good choice, and it's a lot smaller than Rio. It's about a half a million people total, but has an even smaller feel than that. So that's a good choice. Salvador. A lot of folks are interested in Salvador, particularly people of color, because Salvador has a very strong uh, African influence still today in terms of the dress, in terms of the music, in terms of the food that the people meet. So a lot of times, Black folks are interested in going there, to experience that. Okay, and that may be you. Vila Velha Vitória. This is the first place that I went in Brazil. Vitória is the capital of the state of Espírito Santo, which is just north of Rio, and it's on an island. It's okay, but I think what's a better choice is Vila Velha, which is a sister city on the mainland, and that's nice. They have nice beaches there. There's a lot of business English opportunities in this area. There's petroleum is a big industry there, and shipping. So this is a possibility if you're interested in teaching business English. Tal is in the northeast. It's a big tourist area for more for Europeans than North Americans, but tourism is a big thing there, and tourists typically are going to use English. So that's an opportunity. I don't think you'll make as much there in Natal as you could in some other cities, but then again, a lot of your expenses will be lower too. And it's beautiful. It's like sunny almost every day. And if you want to do surfing or any kind of water sports, oh, they have constant winds, so you could do like kite surfing kite surfing, windsurfing. That would be a great place to do it. And then going to the other end of the country, back south of Florianopolis, is Porto Alegre, which is the capital of the southernmost state, Rio Grande do Sul. And that's an interesting place. The southern part of Brazil is really more European, kind of seeming it's a lot of German, Italian folks that immigrated there, and it's really quite interesting. Oh, and I didn't put on here. There's another one called Curitiba, which is Curitiba. That's another place that you might look at. A very nice city. When should you go? The absolute best time to go is right after Carnival, but you don't have to go right immediately after Carnival, but that's a really good time because that's when all of the parties are over. The summer vacation, which of course down there is like around December, January, February, and then you have Carnival right after that. So a lot of people joke that in Brazil the year begins in March, after Carnival. Closer you get like to November, December, the worse it is because I made this mistake. I went down, arrived the end of October, actually Halloween, was just getting going with my classes, and I found some independent students, and then boom, I hit summer vacation and lost a lot of hours. So remember that, right? So try to go as soon after Carnival as you can, and then you've got like 6 months to get up and teaching. Now, what are classes like? This is another common question I get, and it's kind of hard to answer because you might be doing different kinds of content. As I mentioned earlier, there are specialty niches and stuff, but you're not typically going to be teaching in front of a classroom. Okay, it's much more like tutoring. One-on-one, sometimes one-on-two. I've even done a one-on-three before at Petrobras, but it's more like what you're going to see here in the pictures, where you're sitting there and working with one student at a table, and very personal attention that you're giving to the student. And so again, you don't have to stand in front of class, and that's why I say that TEFL programs aren't really good for this because traditional TEFL programs concentrate on teaching classroom full of kids in developing countries still today. There are some TEFL programs I've seen recently about teaching online, but before I would get into one of those, I would look closely at the curriculum and what they are really teaching you. You can also teach online. Now, how about this for cool? So let's say you go down to Brazil, you're there for several months, you start teaching students, and you say, oh, I'm leaving next month. I've got to go back. And they go, oh, hate to lose you. You can say, well, how would you feel about taking classes with me online? And you can do that. I've been in the US for a while now, and I still have students in Brazil. Okay. This is something that is really very well accepted now. When I first started teaching online back in early 2012. It was kind of a new thing in Brazil. But these days, especially after COVID, when so many people had to work remotely, online classes have become much more common and much more accepted. And a lot of my students actually prefer them because they don't have to go off to a school or a place of meet you anywhere or anything. They can just come home from work, take a quick shower, get something to eat, get in their comfortable chair and have class. And so this is really nice. And for you, let's say you stay in Brazil a while, you leave, either you go back to your home country or travel around, gallivant down to Argentina or something, you can continue to have revenue coming in and perhaps teach those students face to face again the following year when you return to Brazil. Something to think about. So, what you want to do is kind of put together a roadmap, and I try to help you do this in my course, pulling it all together. This is Knute Rockne here, statue, who was famous for saying, plan your work and work your plan. Okay, so put it all together, decide you're going to do this, commit to it, get your plan together. I'll help you. Okay. And let me give you an example strategy. And this is very similar to what I did. Okay. So where are you going to go? Let's say you want to go to Rio. What's your niche going to be? Business English. That was me. I'm going to teach via schools, but then also go indie. Again, that was me. And then the face to face, but online. Initially, I was just face to face for about 3 years or so, but then I started migrating to online. When would you want to arrive? As soon after Carnival as possible. Pre-book short-term lodging before you go down there, but wait and look for longer-term lodging once you're on the ground there and you can really see the places. Okay, don't rent a place for months sight unseen. Right. Okay, and then plan to stay 90 days and extend for another 90 days. And I just made a little afterthought note there about if you work through schools, or even if you don't, a lot of the language schools down there, in addition to offering classes in English and Spanish, is also very popular. You'll find that many of them offer what they call Portugués para estrangeiros, which is English for excuse me, sorry about that. It's Portuguese for foreigners. Okay, so that's something that you might look into. And the classes are group classes and very reasonably priced. And yeah, you'll meet some other foreigners down there. So that's a good way to expand your network. And then what do you do after 180 days? Well, I talked about this. You can return to your home country, maybe continue teaching some of your students online. You could roam around. Become a gypsy. Can I still say gypsy today? Is that offensive? Hope not. And you have some online retention, which gives you some continued income to help fund your travels wherever you may be. And return to Brazil the following year, where you stay for another 90 plus 90 days, rinse and repeat. I would say, come on down. The water is fine. This is a shot on Praia Mole, which is literally translates as soft beach because the sand is so like sugary down there. This is my favorite beach in Floripa, and the two girls here are playing what's called fresco ball, which is like paddleball on the beach. Okay, and I've got a couple of folks here that I'm going to ask to say a few words also about the my program. Okay, so sorry, a little bit of commercial coming. All righty, I do hope that you will make the decision to come on down. You'll find my course will help you, and I'm always here if you have questions. All righty, so let me turn it over here. I'm going to ask let's see, Tatiana or Nick, who's up first. Okay, so thank you for your attention. Nick, a chance to talk now. Now, Nick is interesting. He actually bought my course back when it was just a book. You there, guy?
Yeah. You hear me?
Okay, so Nick actually, as I say, purchased the course back when it was a book, and we met down there in Brazil a number of times. And he's spent a lot of time there. I understand you're back up in Canada for the moment, Nick.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm actually living in Brazil. I came up for family matter, but I've been in Rio for about 4 years now, living.
Mhm.
So I don't expect to move back to Canada anytime soon.
Okay. I think from our previous conversations, one of the big reasons for moving to Brazil was the weather, which is something I didn't put in the slideshow.
Yeah, that's one of the top ones for me because I'm looking out my window and it's completely covered in snow.
Or not. I'm in southern Louisiana, and about 2.5 weeks ago, we had several inches of snow here, like 8 or 9 inches of snow here. So it's not something you're going to encounter in Brazil.
No.
Um, okay.
I will add
Anyway,
though, if you go in the south of Brazil, you mentioned Porto Alegre because I visited there and Florianopolis and all those places. It can get chilly uh,
mhm,
during like the months of June, July, August,
mhm.
especially in uh, Rio Grande do Sul, like Porto Alegre. So if you're not really wanting cold weather at all, that probably might not be the place for you if you're going to stay those months, or you could stay during the summer months there. But that's probably the only thing I would mention about the weather
Good.
is like southern
Uh,
Brazil can get a bit chilly.
yeah, and that is true. But let's see. Is there anything that I else that I might have omitted in the presentation that you'd like to mention, Nick?
Maybe safety.
Safety, yeah, safety is a big concern for a lot of people. Thanks for that. Look, I don't want to poo-poo this topic because there is crime in Brazil. There's violent crime there, but I think that it's kind of overblown. Brazil sometimes has a bad rep unfairly. The truth of the matter is, there's violent crime everywhere these days. I mean, I live in the States, and if you watch the news at all, gun violence, mass shootings. It's a problem here. In Brazil, there's crime, but it's localized, mostly in the favelas. And actually, it's not all the favelas. Favela does not necessarily indicate crime. Many are very peaceful. I've been in a lot of favelas, in fact. But any native, any local person will tell you what parts of the city are safe to go in and which are not. Okay. So if you follow that and you're, kind of keep an eye on your stuff while you're at the beach and so on, don't wear flashy jewelry and so on. The odds of any real problems are very low. I was there 12 years, and I had a couple of shouting confrontations with people there. Being a little too persistent, asking for money. That's it. That's it. So thanks for mentioning that, Nick, because I think that's often a concern for a lot of people. Okay, I'm going to mute you and give Tatiana a chance to talk here. Tatiana, appreciate your being on today, but talk a little bit, if you would, about your reasons for going to Brazil. And I think you're most of the way through the course now, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Hi. So I met John a few months ago, and I did purchase the course, and it's been really, really good to have the information literally. And he's even updated a few things that needed to be updated, and so you don't get too overwhelmed because this is like a big process to go down to a new country. And for me, I have always wanted to travel, and Brazil specifically seems like the place for me because of the culture. Like John mentioned, the Afro culture, specifically in Salvador. Um, Bahia is one of the main attractions. And then obviously to teach English, as my way to fund my travels. And so, yeah, the course touches on like, things like how much money do you need to save up, and just things that, even some things that we don't think about that we're gonna need. So a lot of things that were very, very helpful. And then so when you get down there, you're not like freaking out and like start from ground zero. So
Right.
it's been really good, and I plan to go down by the end of April of this year. So yeah, very
All right.
grateful for this. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. You're moving along. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, everyone. Thank you for attending. I know we all have other things to do, but I appreciate your being here today. I plan to edit this webinar and put it up in my YouTube channel, hopefully by tomorrow. If you have any questions, get back in touch with me. I hope that you might decide to purchase the course, but if you're not ready yet, I understand. Just please ask me any questions, keep in touch, because I really think if you go down to Brazil, spend some time there, you really won't regret it. Likely you'll make a lot of memories that will last you a lifetime. All righty, folks. So thanks again for coming, and have a nice Sunday.